Get this straight. While Cohen and Manafort are facing serious prison sentences, everyone in Hillary Clinton's orbit is getting off scot-free. And what about the surveillance of members of the Trump campaign? No charges filed of that, and no evidence that the special prosecutor is pursuing that. This all sounds like a two-tiered system of justice to me. Raising questions, is the second special counsel needed? Joining me now for a reaction are two lawyers, former U.S. Attorney Kendall Coffey and Brian Rotella, CEO and senior partner of Genco Legal. I appreciate you both being here. I want to get your perspective as attorneys. This whole issue of attorney-client privilege. If you will go out and hire an attorney to do something, I presume that you do it to make sure that it's done legally and lawfully. And you have some protection in being able to give that information and make those things move forward. So as you look at this situation, Kendall, isn't that a plausible story or scenario? How did that just totally fall apart in the Cohen situation?
Sure, and that's why we can charge the big bucks. Clients trust us.
Right.
They trust us with confidentiality. They trust us with figuring all this out. Campaign finance laws are especially complicated, especially federal campaign finance laws. So I strongly suspect not only did the president have no idea that somebody might put this on a prosecution radar screen someday, but I doubt Michael Cohen did. Because what is being talked about as a federal crime was unsuccessfully raised against John Edwards. You remember that years ago, discredited
right.
as a theory. And most people think if you use personal money that goes to some private person in order to deal with personal issues, that's not a campaign contribution.
Brian, are we supposed to believe that every conversation now that Donald Trump has had with his attorney is somehow part of what the special counsel gets to look at? Isn't there some sort of limitation? Because that attorney-client privilege isn't just waived on all of these issues, correct?
Yeah, Jason. I mean, look, for your audience, anyone who heard this allocution that Michael Cohen gave yesterday, and an allocution might sound like something from The Sopranos. You know, I'm Italian-American, and we, the folks would get up in front of the court and they would attest that there was this thing called the mafia in the United States. I'm not sure if the president should nickname Michael Cohen either Better Not Call Saul or Captain Obvious. I mean, that's pretty obvious what he got up and said yesterday, which is that the president, there were women that he was having relationships with outside of his marriage, and that he thought that that might impact his view on the folks' view on the election. To me, there was nothing criminal about that. And getting to your question, as a lawyer, the attorney-client privilege is the one sacred thing we have. Lawyers have terrible reputations, and I think Kendall would even agree. Unfortunately, we have it for a reason a lot of times. And it looks like to me that Donald Trump has found himself in the Jurassic Park of lawyers. I mean, I'm waiting for the next Raptor lawyer to come out of this thing between Lanny Davis, and I was listening to your last segment, who, you know, the stuff that he did back in the 90s to some of the things that we're seeing now with Cohen. And then also, let's not forget that Jim Comey is an attorney. And you know very well, Jason, look what that attorney did in his findings back on July 5th of 2016 when he found that Hillary Clinton was, quote unquote, extremely careless with her emails.
Yeah.
Oh, which, by the way, was a standard changed by our favorite FBI
believe me, there's a whole other
Schrock.
set of subjects we can talk about there. What is highly suspicious for me is that Donald Trump's former attorney is suddenly represented by somebody from the Clinton orbit, Lanny Davis. And Lanny has a duty and a responsibility under the law to protect his client. But I want to play a clip from Lanny Davis here, and I want you to ask yourselves at home, is Lanny Davis working in the best interests of his client, Mr. Cohen, or is he working in the best interest of his own personal political beliefs? Watch this clip.
Would Michael Cohen seek a pardon from the President of the United States for any of this?
The answer is definitively no, under no circumstances, since he came to the judgment after Mr. Trump's election to the President of the United States that his suitability is a serious risk to our country. And certainly after Helsinki creates serious questions about his loyalty to our country, his answer would be no, I do not want a pardon from this man.
Are you kidding me? If you're an attorney for somebody who is now pleading guilty to a felony, you wouldn't accept a pardon from the President of the United States? How in the world can you make a case that that is in the best interest of his client, Mr. Cohen? Kendall, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it sounds like positioning. I'm sure Lanny Davis had some conversation with his client as well as his co-counsel before he launched into that. I think anybody would accept a pardon from about anybody who was president. It's so much better than the alternatives.
No, and I think he's doing it for some political posturing. But Brian, what's your take on it?
Jason, I think it's comical that Lanny Davis is Michael Cohen's lawyer. I mean, for folks that may not remember this, I mean, Lanny Davis was as entrenched in the 90s with the Clintons as episodes of Friends and Blockbuster Video. I mean, he was part of the culture. He is one of their best friends, and that's who's the attorney for Michael Cohen. Yeah. So the fact that I think one of your previous guests said that he got up and said what he said in court, which I don't believe is a crime, and it's Captain Obvious of something about President Trump, and that's all the evidence that we've seen today about anything that has to do with President Trump in this investigation. I think it raises a lot of questions to folks out in America who are wondering, what's all the billable hours going on in the Mueller investigation? That's all on the taxpayers' dime, and I think they're probably pretty sick of it.
Yeah, and I'd love to find out who's funding Lanny Davis in this and what his political motivations are. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
It's a stunning set of admissions in U.S. District Court in Lower Manhattan by a man who was once one of the president's most trusted employees. Michael Cohen admitted he lied, cheated, and paid women off, he says, to help his boss. Cohen, who walked out of the courthouse late yesterday free on $500,000 bond, pled guilty to hiding income from his taxicab business, hiding debt to secure a home equity loan, and arranging payments to two women in the run-up to the presidential election in coordination with and at the direction of a candidate for federal office to try and help him win.
Mr. Cohen disregarded that training, disregarded that tradition, and decided that he was above the law, and for that he was going to pay a very, very serious price.
Cohen admitted he paid $130,000 to Stephanie Clifford, better known by her porn name, Stormy Daniels, because she was ready to go public with a claimed affair with Mr. Trump that she said happened a decade earlier. And Cohen arranged to reimburse a tabloid for burying a story about former Playboy model Karen McDougal, who also claimed an affair with Mr. Trump. Cohen's lawyer says the president should be worried.
Yes, he committed a crime. He should be indicted. If he were not president, he clearly would be indicted and jailed for that crime. Whether he can be indicted as president, of course, is not yet decided.
Well, nothing in Cohen's plea deal requires him to cooperate with any investigation of the president, but it doesn't preclude him from doing it either. Eric?
So, Rick, meanwhile, the president's tweeting on this, we just said a few moments ago. What else are you hearing from the White House on the stunning developments?
Yeah, it was a pretty remarkable tweet, and we got a statement last night from the president's new personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who said, quote, "There is no allegation of any wrongdoing against the president and the government's charges against Mr. Cohen." Cohen, by the way, will be sentenced December 12th, or there's already a deal in place to cut his max from 65 years to somewhere between 3 to 5 years in federal prison.
Well, after a number of days of reviewing videotape that we had collected during a neighborhood canvass, after reviewing those tapes again for several days, we were able to, first of all, see what we believe to have been Molly running on one of the streets, one of the local streets. And from that, we then started to take a look at all of the vehicles that were also captured on video, and eventually identified the vehicle that was driven by Mr. Rivera.
How far along in the investigation did you get a hold of that surveillance video?
You know, that had been asked to me, rephrase that. That had been asked some time ago by a number of different media outlets, and I really don't know the exact day that we collected that video. I can tell you that we collected video all over the city, and so it took us a while to review all of those videotapes. And so I know that we had it for a few days, and I know that we reviewed it for several days. But the exact date in which we seized the video, I don't know.
Okay. Can you describe a little bit more in detail what you saw on that video? What kind of vehicle? Was it driving slowly down the street? What did you see on that surveillance video?
I can tell you that we saw Molly running, and we also saw this black vehicle. It's a black Malibu, Chevy Malibu. And so there's some certain features and some distinct features, I guess I would say, to the vehicle, and that's why we were able to eventually locate it outside of town.
Were you able to see the license plate from the surveillance video?
No.
No. So can you explain a little bit more in detail about what led you specifically to the suspect?
Well, again, primarily the vehicle. We, again, had some rather distinct features to the vehicle that allowed us to basically search the area for it, and it just happened that we were able to locate the vehicle and then subsequently identify Mr. Rivera driving the vehicle, and that's ultimately what led us to interviewing him.
When you say distinct features, are you talking about like a bumper sticker or something on the car that was unusual?
Just something on the car that was unusual. I don't think I want to go into detail what those things are or what was unusual, but just something that stood out to us as investigators, and from that we were able to basically search out the vehicle and find Mr. Rivera.
Okay.
Are my hands showing? Do you want me to show my hands or not?
They're below.
Okay.
Approximately what time of day was the video taken? Was it taken during the day or at night?
It was taken, I think, 24/7, and so.
The shot of the Chevy Malibu, was that at nighttime or was that during the day?
Oh, well, I don't want to get into detail as to the time that it was captured, but I will tell you it was within our timeline that we had established, and therefore it was a little bit easier to try to locate and identify the vehicle, but we focused on what we believed to be our timeline. And so I don't want to, again, get into any of the details of our timeline, but it just reconfirmed our timeline.
Okay, but you can't say if she was running during the day or at night.
I can tell you it was in, hold on a second, let me try to remember what has been said in the past. I could say it was during the, let's just say it was the late afternoon hours of July 18th, 2018.